the benefit realization time for digitalization in finance and accounting function is 10 times faster and bigger as compared to anything in the other functions. Now, if I take this, what it means is finances finally, it's all about cash inflow, cash outflow, and how do you project cash in terms of business, right? So just imagine the impact. If I do something correct and something really phenomenal, it might create a huge impact to the overall cash flows, how it's being managed and the kind of cash reserves you might get into your kitty. So I want to start with that. Now, coming to your question, I think your question was, how does the future look like, right, in the next 3 to 5 years? You're on mute, Sai Charan, if you're speaking.
Sorry. So, sir, our question is like, how have the expectations from finance function has been transformed over the last 3 to 5 years, sir? So we are asking about past 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. In other words, I think if I understand you right, what you're trying to say is how finance and accounting functions have been adopting digitalization or any other techniques or methodologies to transform themselves, right, in the last 3 to 5 years. So I will focus more on the digitalization aspect of it. Of course, you can do process transformation, you can do business transformation out there. From digitalization, I have seen many things, and again, this is quite contextual because it depends upon the organization and its maturity, right? If I take an organization and F&A as a function, and suppose it is very at a nascent stage, and they don't have a transactional system, so I have seen enterprises who have implemented transactional systems like SAP Finance or Tally or anything that can keep transactional records digitally, right? That also I have seen. I have also seen the other side of it where they're quite digitally matured and they're talking about things like RPA, right, which is robotic process automation, where you automate a lot of these processes. Like it can be invoice reconciliation, it can be bank guarantees that gets done with your company and the banks, So a lot of these processes have also been being adopted, and I'm seeing companies reaping benefits. I have also seen companies where they are using simple visualization, dashboards to present the numbers in a better and an insightful way. I have also seen organizations who have gone a step further on how to bring cognitive analytics on top of it, right? You are drowned with so much of financial data that picking a gold nugget out of it itself is a Herculean task, right? If I give that task to a computer and tell him what to do, he might come up with those insights, those gold nuggets, which you can quickly act upon. So I have seen companies transitioning from nowhere to everywhere. So that's my take on your question, Saichal.
So that's a very interesting insight, Satish. So I just want to add a couple of points from my side as well. So I think there are two big changes which I have seen, Sai, over the last few years. And for those of you who are in the finance function or working closely with the finance function, these are something you'll be able to connect with much better. I completely agree with all the points which Satish spoke about, but just to add a couple of more points. Firstly, I feel that in the last 3 to 5 years, the finance function is increasingly moving not only on the balance sheet side, but also on the P&L side. Normally, finance function tends to focus more and more on the balance sheet, managing the working capital, managing debtors, managing payments. It was considered traditionally more a balance sheet function, while sales was more a P&L function. But now you realize that finance is expected to become a business partner, which means helping business leaders, P&L leaders identify opportunities, ensuring that the cash flow is available for it, and ensuring that we are investing in the right place becomes a very critical part of the finance function. The second point links back again very closely to what Satish spoke about earlier, is the need for real-time information. So gone are the days when one could say, I will publish a weekly report or a fortnightly report which people are able to see. We moved to an era where information is available. In fact, we have too much data to be able to crunch the data and come out with insights on a real-time basis is really a very, very big transition, which I've seen a lot of my clients and companies go through over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years specifically.
Thanks a lot, sir. Subramaniam, sir.
I think Manish is trying to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, just to put the same thing which Vimal was telling in a different perspective. See, actually, when I started my career, it was traditionally CFOs have a role of an operator and controller only. In fact, it is not only in homegrown conglomerates, but also in multinational companies. But that phase has changed in the last 3, 4, 5 years probably. So now the CFOs are being looked at in 4 different facets. Basically, from the operator, where the costs and service levels to fulfill finance responsibilities, the operation finance standardization, and the effective management. And they are being looked at steward, where they protect and preserve, where Vimal has pointed out with respect to the accounting, financial and tax reporting, the regulatory filings, effective governance, risk management and control environment. And then they were being looked as a catalyst as well, where the catalyst simulates behaviors across the organization to achieve the strategic and financial objectives through business, finance and partnering, then transparent forecasting and effective change leadership. And then nowadays they are being looked at as strategists, where the financial leadership is in determining the strategic business direction and aligns the financial strategies through the strategic planning and execution, the organic and inorganic growth, and etc. And I think going ahead, so as Vimal was putting it nicely, I think we are getting into the real-time financial data probably. So that's my perspective about how the CFO's role has changed in the last probably 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Subhu. I want to add on to what you have just said. It's a question further to how do you think will this digitalization impact the function? So what will be the outcome once we implement the technologies and all these systems in place?
Very, very interesting question, Yasser. So again, I can give you an example of a client who we're working very closely with. And this is a common challenge we tend to come across in a number of organizations. So normally there's a budget prepared, right? An annual operating plan or a budget, which is made in the beginning of the year or a couple of months before the financial year. And as the year progresses, there are various things which keep changing, positives and negatives, what we call as risks and opportunities. So that organizations are no longer publishing, finance organizations are no longer publishing a latest estimate, an LE or a revision. Different organizations name it differently, R1, R2, R3 or LE1, LE2, LE3. Now the model is more to say, I have a budget or operating plan and I'll have risks and opportunities, RNOs. The digitalization is helping us capture the RNO in a far more accurate, in a far more insightful manner. For example, if there is a product failure which is happening in the market and you're expecting that warranty costs are going to go up, that's a potential risk to your, let's say you're targeting a 200 or a 250 crore EBITDA number. You're saying that particular incremental warranty cost is going to impact my EBITDA by 10 to 12 crores in a negative manner. Similarly, there is a new big opportunity which is coming up either from a technology standpoint or from a market standpoint or a product you're launching, which is not anticipated because there's a sudden change in demand in the market. That's captured as an additional opportunity. So finance function is kind of very interesting role of working with business closely to manage the RNO very, very insightfully using the data or the digital tools available to them.
That was an insightful response, sir. Subramaniam, sir, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, see, I think from the finance perspective, I think business partnering is going to shift upstream from budgeting and reporting to include the scenario planning as well, or advanced forecasting and the better visualization. So the forecasting, as he was telling, it is not going to happen on a monthly or quarterly, but it will happen in real time. So with growing expectations for responsiveness and the quality from finance, self-service will be of paramount importance, because smart agents will learn what kinds of business information will the individual needs and deliver those information proactively. And as Mr. Patel was telling, the NLP or the RPA process, it is going to play a major role in the finance function.
I just wanted to add to what Subramanian said or what Vimal is trying to put forth. What I'm saying, right, is it's no more even real time, right? We are still talking about real time is still historical. People are now talking about before time, right? Before an event occurs, before something happens, I want to know and act. So I think there's also a lot of shift in the mindset happening, that even I get an information that I'm going to do so much profit, so much loss, risk or opportunities. How can I know it in advance so that I can react well with my current resources and capitalize on that particular event? So just wanted to add a bit of mindset change that is happening, because I have worked extensively in Europe and the US regions where they are quite digitally matured, and they're looking out for ways and means of, how can I still exploit the data and get insights.
Thank you, sir. I think you brought in a new perspective to what was presently being discussed. I'm touching upon a point which Subramanian said, robotic process automation. As soon as the point of robotic process automation comes, people start fearing that probably we are replacing the human resource with a robot. So I wanted each of the panelists to shed light on whether it's a myth that digitalization is replacing the traditional manpower, or is it not? Is it not a thing to fear about? So I think Satish, sir, would you like to go first?
Oh yeah, definitely. And yes, it's a very good question. And this question has been asked to me by so many people, not only in the Asia region, but even in US and Europe. This question is pertinent, right? I mean, here is my perspective, is, we got smartphones, right? And I presume we all got smart after getting those smartphones. But here is the case, right? Do you really think by having smartphones, which is digitally, enhancing a person in terms of his actions, have they stopped the population? People are still growing up, right? So similarly, having digitalization doesn't mean that you will start saying that humans are not needed, right? Humans are very much needed. The reason is, as I said, cognitive computing, right? It's still a gray area. People are trying to still fish out as to how do I make it learn faster. But human has got that tendency of, looking into the past, looking into the future, and bringing a lot of cognizance around it, which digital would be very difficult to take care of. So humans would be needed. The plus point is, rather than you doing a mundane task, right? Hereafter, you'll be doing something more interesting, something more different, right? Why do you want to do the same invoice processing day in, day out, say 100 processes per day, look at the supplier code, look at the purchase amount, look at my GST number, so on and so forth, right? You will say, what is this, right? So I think that's how I look at it. In fact, it will give avenues for you to make your work more interesting and help you invest your time in much better alternatives.
Thank you, sir. Vimal sir, would you like to add to that? Satish sir has given a nice perspective that the cognizance is still not as developed and there's a long way to go.
Right. It's a fantastic topic to discuss, Yasser, and I think I agree with Satish. This is a very hotly debated topic across the world. I can give you a few illustrations for the benefit of everyone. Some of us have lived through that particular period. Back in the late 80s, Government of India first announced that they're going to be bringing in computers in the banking industry. Okay. And you can understand the kind of challenges which people had because nobody knew how a computer works or what is going to happen. There were massive union strikes, right? The banks and insurance companies started striking work saying, how is this possible? The fear is that half the people will be sent home because of these computers. We will not learn computers. Okay, this was late 80s. I distinctly remember I used to live in Chennai at that time. The Hindu took a very big article on the very front page saying the challenges of computerization, etc. But since then, we've come a long way. The banking industry has grown 20 times or 30 times. So many more people are able to get access to technology or better technology-enabled banking because of the adoption of technology. The bigger advantage of RPA, and that's a very intricate question, right? Productivity and innovation. These are very important aspects of any business. What RPA will help us get is higher levels of productivity. It will not give you innovation. What it means is that the same monotonous process, that could be an invoice processing activity, it could be a bill payment activity, it can be a vendor conversation. It just reduces the monotony part because a bot can do it so much faster because it's repetitive. It can give you so much more productivity. But can a bot give you innovation? Innovation and creativity are the biggest capabilities which people bring to the table. That is why people will still remain an integral part of the process. But the roles will change. You will have more and more interesting roles. You will not have an MIS department, for example. You have data science departments, right? You will not have a typical voice processing team. You'll have people who are looking at vendor relationships in a far more intricate manner. So that is the way I see the entire business shaping or taking advantage of technology rather than just jobs getting abolished. That's my take on the story.
Hey, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to ride on what Vimal said, on changing in ways. So sorry about that. I'm just pitching in. But today I was seeing my LinkedIn networks, and I saw somebody putting a job posting for customer obsession manager. Earlier we used to call it as a relationship manager, right? And suddenly I'm seeing a title change, customer obsession manager. I mean, just imagine, I'm just writing on Vimal what you said, right? I mean, things will change for the better of it, right? You will be able to invest time and energy in doing better things, knowledgeable things. So, sorry, Subramanian, I didn't mean to barge in and put it. It just reminded me, and I thought of putting that.
A very valid thought. Super, sure. Would you like to add to this?
My perspective is almost the same. Actually, digitalization will transform work with people who has a higher qualification and competency profile, probably. But I don't think they will be. It'll replace it completely. See, people will always be indispensable. So I can narrate similar to what Vimal has told. I can narrate two examples. One is in the same 80s and 90s that ATMs have come. Right? So when ATMs came, it is completely away from the human touch where you can go withdraw the money, and it is supposed to be dispensed with the tellers in the banks basically. But even today, after 20 or 30 years, even if you today, if you are going to banks, even the teller position is there. So there is no it is not completely replaced because of ATMs. In fact, one more thing, I had my personal experience when I visited in Canada. My friends took to a restaurant, okay, where when we went to the restaurant, nobody was there to welcome us. So we just went, we sat in the table, and there was an iPad in the table. Okay, so I asked my friends, what is this iPad? So you need to order through this, and things will come to the table. So that's how they responded. So when I opened the iPad, there were lots of new items which were there. So I don't know whom to ask because it is completely, there is no human touch at all. Okay. So I was completely not aware of the menu. Like being a vegetarian, I don't know what to eat, what to select, nothing I know. So I don't think the digitalization is going to completely take off or replace the humans, because people will feel something that human touch should be essential. So that's my perspective on this. So I think digitalization is going to create more jobs rather than replace.
Thanks for the nice analogy of the iPad and how the human touch of the waiter is always essential. I would like to touch upon one point which all the three of the speakers had told. They told that in the upcoming era, there would be new kind of skills which the people should have to survive in the market. So since the basic menial jobs could be digitized, so what are the skills that the each function, suppose in finance department or operations department, so what kind of skills should these people learn and incorporate into their day-to-day life? Subbu sir, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Yasser. See, as far as finance is concerned, I think finance talent of the future will be made up of individuals belonging to probably Gen Y and Gen Z with the diverse expectations around the work and value systems. So I think people will start invading the world of finance leadership who has a high level of digital dexterity and the analytical mindset. So again, the finance is going to place its bets on the data scientists and design professionals who can engineer the automated reporting and forecasting, the end-to-end process, etc. So the workforce is also going to be augmented by robots and cognitive agents. So the function as such is going to need humans who can build and connect the systems that interact with other systems. So as such, my view is business is going to look for the employees who will be good at the tasks that smart automation struggles to do and add value to the smart automation. So I would look for people to develop their skills in data analytics, the Power BI, robotics, blockchain, and etc. Probably.
Thank you, Subbu sir. If the other panelists don't want to add anything, we can go to the next question.
Vimal sir, would you like to add anything, sir? Or can we go to next one?
All right, I think we can go ahead. Just one small note I wanted to interject that presently we have over 120 participants with us, and as the word is spreading, the count is increasing. So we started off with 80, 90, and I think the discussion is going quite good. So that was a small thing I wanted to say in between. Saicharan, back to you. You can ask your next question.
I just wanted to add one line to Subbu's point. I think it's a very important aspect. See, the nature of technology will keep changing, right? For somebody in his mid 20s or early 30s, you still have another 30, 35 years of career ahead. So you cannot say that, no, I will learn a blockchain, for example, that is my entire future. But there are some fundamental building blocks which are always useful. Problem solving, especially if you are a professional, that's a foundation of a business. To be able to identify a problem, come together as a team and solve for a problem. Creativity, extremely important. You know, things may have happened in a particular fashion for a period of time, but being able to challenge a particular situation in an objective and a constructive manner, to be able to take things forward, these are fundamental skills. And last and very important is your emotional quotient. to be able to appreciate points of views from different parts of the business. Like as a salesperson, you have a very clear focus on sales, or a finance person, a clear focus on finance. But to be able to understand the point of view of different parts of the business and to be able to work together as a team and succeed, that these are skills that are very, very fundamental and foundational. So I would really urge you guys to focus on building those and acknowledge the importance of those skills. That's the point I wanted to add.
Thanks a lot, Vimal sir. Actually, after listening to all your views, I think perspective of majority of the audience would have changed on digitalization. They got a better idea on how digitalization is going to help in improving their efficiency. So, as a continuation to the previous question, I would like to ask one thing. So, what impact would digitalization and automation have on organization culture in terms of interpersonal relationships and teamwork? Because recently in COVID scenario, we can see majority of the people are operating from work from home basis. So how can we ensure that the team relations are even stronger? Yes, sir.
This is a very specific question to somebody, or is a general question to the panel? Sorry.
General question to the panel, sir.
Okay.
You
I'll
may
go. If anybody wants the question, I'm happy for that. I'll wait it out.
You may go ahead, sir.
Sure. So, Sai, again, very interesting question. So, I'm running around 7 different projects at this particular point in time, different clients, different sectors. So I can share some of the insights I see in terms of how companies are trying to build teams. Now, there's a client of mine where the chairman sits in London, completely different time zone. After the pandemic happened and the lockdown happened, we've had a new head of sales, a new head of marketing, and we also have a new HR director and a new strategy director. So in the XCOM, we have people who have never met each other for the last 10 months or last 8 months, but it's a fully functional organization. Mm-hmm. There is no challenge in terms of interfaces, in terms of, information flow or decision making. So how are people trying to achieve it? I think the need to communicate is more than ever before. In a face-to-face world, you have the opportunity, or in a physical world, you have the chance of picking up body language. You have the chance of picking up emotions much better. In a digital panel, in a digital world, the best way to do this is to try and communicate as many times as possible. In fact, one of the popular sayings is that unless a particular point is made at least 20 times, the last person in the organization will not hear about it. So over communicate is now kind of becoming an important aspect to be able to ensure that the leadership's thought process, profit pool identification, challenges, all of this is being seamlessly communicated. Motivation is becoming a big challenge. Earlier, when you come to office, there's a clear balance or separation between work environment and home environment. Now that is kind of getting merged. So companies are trying to come up with innovative ways to ensure that there's a clear time limit when people can focus on their work and then they can get back to their personal activities. So these are things which companies are trying to do differently to be able to run effectively, even as they are trying to keep their entire organization in a growth path.
Okay, thanks for your views, sir. Satish sir, would you like to add on this?
Satish, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Vimal, for pointing it out. Otherwise, I would have been speaking to my laptop, for all along. Pretty much Vimal covered those points. There's another saying, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. I change it a little bit. I say necessity is the mother of innovation, right? So we have been pushed to show, right, because of this pandemic, because of these changes in the nature of the ecosystem, and we adopted the virtual platform. I'm sure initially a couple of months, we would be struggling as to where are the buttons to show my face, where are the buttons to mute, unmute, etc., right? So, but that there's no going back. It's only going forward, right? So you adapt, and you deploy those options to yourself and get innovated in terms of delivery. So that's what I would say. You have to change. Things are changing, and you have to keep innovating in your own area to find ways of working. So it will automatically start nurturing your either communication skills or what are skills, etc. Just wanted to add kind of a top it up or as a sideline discussions, to what we will say.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Thanks for your views and suggestions as well. So, sir, in continuation to this, I would like to ask you another question. So, implementation of digitalization normally involves a lot of change management. So, any suggestions or recommendations to deal with this, sir, from you, Satish, sir?
Oh, to me, okay.
Yeah.
It's a great question, actually, right? Adopting is not a bigger deal. Changing ourselves to that adopted environment or methodology or digital is the big thing. And since I am working with most of the L&T group of companies, specifically the manufacturing oriented, like it can be US walls or heavy engineering defense, doing a lot of digital initiatives. So as I said, one way to look at it is there is no alternative to digitalization, right? You have to adopt it. Can anyone say that, I want to go back to my analog phone? I'm sure you got what, 120, 130 participants. Take a poll and tell him, if I give an option, you got a smartphone and you got an analog phone, right? A digital phone and an analog phone. I'm sure nobody would want to go to analog phone. Right? You might want to go to smartphone, which is a digital phone. That is one. Second thing is, I'm taking this analogy forward. When you purchased a smartphone, right? Did anyone come to you and teach it how to use it? You yourself started it, did something, you learned on the job and you adopted and you started seeing the benefits, right? That's exactly what is needed when you undertake any digital journey. Right? May it be as simple as putting robotic process automation, which is automating a process. There was also a question on what kind of skill sets are needed, right, in this digital era. I think you don't need any technology skill sets at all. Technology have been so advancedly developed that it tells you how to use it, right? RPA, even I will tell you, we have deployed 250 RPA processes in L&T. 70% of those RPA processes has been deployed in F&A area. Okay, I can give you examples also later. So, and this 70% of the RPA use cases have been developed by the end users themselves who do not know the ABC of that software. They took Automation Anywhere and UiPath as a software technology product. But it is so self-explanatory. It's a drag and drop, right? You put everything and then it constructs at the background and your process is automated. So what I'm trying to say here is there are a lot of applications that have been done in the digital front, especially in the F&A area, where they have reaped a lot of benefits. So from a change management, I think the first change I would request everyone to is, change your attitude towards digitalization. Digitalization is not an animal to be feared of. It's your companion. Be friend with it, and you will reap a lot of benefits. And of course, you need a senior management overview or focus on that. And that's how people are changing and changing for better. So those are my 2 cents on digitalization. I can speak for hours on this because this is a topic, right? So unless somebody would like to add up.
No, I think it's a fantastic explanation, Satish. I think the success of any change management program, digital or otherwise, is to be able to bring out the benefits and to build the entire process or project or whatever you're doing in a manner where people can intuitively see the benefits, right?
Yeah.
If you try to teach your parents or grandparents to use a computer, they will really be uncomfortable. But on a smartphone, I mean, it's so much easier to to book a movie ticket or buy grocery or whatever they want to do. So that's the reason why smartphones are so much more easier for people to get on online. Same thing with any other change management process.
Thank you very much for adding on to that. Now, I think we'll be moving to the last question. So the question is, there are a lot of digital technologies out there. Could you name some of them and let us know how to prioritize on which one to go ahead with first? So the first, I think, Vimal, do you want to go ahead first?
So again, I will give you a business answer, then I'll follow up the technology answer. So what is digital, right? I mean, this is a question which a lot of my clients ask me, a lot of people I come across ask me. I break it into three parts. There is digital customer, there is digital operations, and then there is your rest of the digital part. It could be digital manufacturing, various other aspects of digital, right? So what you choose to do essentially enables business to become better. There's no standalone digital. Digital doesn't stand by itself. It is either helping you grow your top line, helping you become more productive, helping you become more efficient. There are different aspects of it. That's the first thing which people have to understand. So fundamentally, if you have a business mindset, you will be able to appreciate digital helps you to do much better. That's the first part of it. Second part of it, there are some clear technologies, and coming back to the primary question, which are going to really change the way the world looks and the way it operates. Clearly, for example, additive manufacturing is on the way. And given you're a manufacturing industrial equipment company, additive manufacturing is definitely going to be a very big change. And I'm not talking about the usual blockchains, Bitcoin, which are more relevant for certain other sectors, so much more for the sectors. 3D printing is going to become so much more important. To be able to demonstrate a prototype much faster and take it to market, test it out before you building out a more complicated or more comprehensive tooling process which can help you in mass manufacturing. See, these are going to be very, very important from a industrial equipment manufacturing. IoT again is going to be a very important element to be able to understand how your machines are functioning. How are you able to use the data which comes from those sensors? In fact, I was in an interesting conversation about warranty cost. One of my clients had reached out to me, right? Now they're trying to put together technologies which can understand the sensor data in a vehicle to be able to understand, did the failure happen because of abuse? Did the failure happen because the supplier didn't do a good job? Did it happen because the R&D while designing a product didn't come up with the right design? There could be many reasons for failure. And our inability to understand why a failure happened effectively meant the company is absorbing the warranty costs. So that's what the enablement is. So to be able to understand how it can fit in your context is more important than saying the technology of the future. That's my comment.
Thank you. Subhu, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, see, I think I can tell probably from finance point of view. So how it is going to get affected. Probably, see, I think AI or chatbots is going to support the automatic readout of invoices and documents for processing in the accounts department. Like then automation of payment transfers will happen automatically. So I think these are all the ones which is going to impact. So gone are the days of copying and pasting values on a contract or invoice or other document into an ERP system. Again, as Mr. Satish was telling, the RPA is going to play a major role where it is going to be rule-based process. For example, in AR or the travel expenses. In fact, general accounting in booking the journal entries. So I think this is going to be the impact which is going to be in finance.
Thank you, sir. 3D printing from Vimal sir and RPA from you, and now we'd like to know from Satish Patel sir.
Yeah. See, it's a very broad question, and I'm sure your question was more in the interest of function, finance function, right? So I'm sticking to finance function. Definitely, RPA is the technology being used by 99% of the companies worldwide. It is the first step towards digitalization, because finance and accounting, they deal with invoices, they deal with payments, etc., etc. They also deal with banks. So a lot of paperwork transaction happens. That's one technology, definitely. Second, I already assumed you're having Power BI as a visualization tool, right? So extensive usage of Power BI and not a typical usage of a Power BI, just to have some fancy dashboards. But there are a lot of good things in Power BI which can be utilized for finance. But now I'm talking more from visualization so that you get insights. Third technology that is really upcoming is, can I put some cognitive mechanism on top of it, right? So you can talk about predictive analytics, you can talk about prescriptive analytics, right? Going still further, right? So I think these three technologies are pretty much essential for the digital transformation of F&A from my perspective. Of course, technology is evolving month by month. I won't say day by day, month by month. So probably 6 months down the line, if you ask me this question again, probably I might revise my answer and say, hey, instead of this, I think you need to do this. So as on today, I think this is where we can head.
Thank you, sir. I think we are on track for the Q&A round now. Anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you can type it in the chat box.
Are there any questions coming? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you give us some specific examples of how L&T has implemented RPA in their process? I think Satish, this question is to Satish, sir.
Okay, fine. I think the question is about examples of RPA, right, in L&T.
Right.
Okay. Many examples are there. As I said, around 140 processes have been RPA'd, right? So I'm giving few examples. One is they have extensively used it for invoice processing, right? Since it's all L&T team here, you might know SSC, right, which is processing our claims, our certain invoices they process. They process 2.1 lakh invoices per month, right? And around 48 people do that job. They were doing that job, 48 people were doing that job. Now with the introduction of RPA, right? And of course, they were taking around 18 minutes to process one invoice. I'm talking about the past, right? After putting RPA, the invoicing time was literally reduced to a few seconds or maybe 10, 15 seconds, right? And everything was being done automated. So invoice processing is one example. Second example can be bank guarantees, where you have to reconcile the numbers on a periodic basis. Third is, again, it all depends upon the process maturity, how it happens in your organization. So some might be applicable, some might not be applicable. But for heavy engineering, right, it is one of the ICs. What they were doing is the goods processing document, right? They had to capture certain elements or information and put it into their finance system, which is SAP. Now that they automated, right? they were doing it around 40,000 transactions per month. They automated it through RPA. So that is one example. What else? Debit notes can be automated. So there are many such processes that can be automated. Maybe with Subbu, we can have this chat later on as to what are the processes he's looking out for, and I can give more examples.
Thanks for your answer, sir. We have got another question in the inbox. So, how do we compute return on investment for digital investments, sir? Satish sir, this question is again to you.
You are asking me all the tough questions, sir, and the easy ones to the other panelists. And ROI is the most toughest one.
So we got to know from your side, sir.
So let me, Musa has asked this question. Let me ask you a question back. Did you do a ROI calculation when buying a smartphone? Whatever, I mean, Samsung, you might have bought OnePlus or Apple or whatever, right? Did you do an ROI and cost benefit analysis and whatever the terminology we can use it for? I think the reason I'm trying to put that question back to you guys is for certain things you need not do an ROI. It's a proven thing by the whole world, right? Why do you want to spend your energy and time in doing the same again? And they have done that and they have employed it. So I think if other person has bought a smartphone, I think it's smart of me to buy a smartphone directly, right? Rather than again doing a ROI on it. So I think from a digital or digitalization perspective, we should not focus too much on ROI. Yes, ROI is needed when there are very, very heavy investments. Then you need to know whether I'm going on the right track or etc. And you can do that cost benefit analysis. But by and large, 50% of the digital initiatives, I don't think so ROI is needed. That is one point. Second is digital is as gray as it can be. There are 50 shades of gray for digital, right? The understanding the definition of it. So what companies do is they go on a pilot basis, right? Before I take a big plunge into it, let me do it on a small scale as an example. If I like it, I adopt it. So that's my, I would say 2 cents on this because it's a big subject.
Thank you, Satish, for taking such a tough question head on. This question has also been asked to Vimal, so he can tell his take on this. And I'm clubbing another question which has also been asked to Vimal, sir. How are some of the industry peers using blockchain in their processes?
Sure. So the ROI question was very interesting, Satish, and I really liked your response to that. So I keep facing this question all the time, right? So whenever I go to a client environment and we're talking about a digital project, so somebody in the crowd always asks this question saying, how do I measure the benefits? It's in simpler words. There are 2 parts to it. There is an economic benefit which you can actually measure. And then there is a softer intangible benefit in terms of experience, skill set, the overall process streamlining, etc. More indicative and a little bit more subjective. But in the programs where I have led and where I've been a part of, I've typically seen the payback period is anywhere between 6 to 8 months, right? It's a really very fantastic return if you think about it. It's money which you invest is getting paid back to you within the same financial year. That's just a reference point for those who are being interested in it. The second part of your question, you wanted to understand how do industry peers use blockchain and RPAs in the processes. RPA and blockchain, first of all, are very different technologies. So I'll take the RPA part, and I think Satish already covered RPA quite extensively. In fact, back in 2017, 16-17, I was one of those people who was implementing the SSE RPA and that transmission program along with under SNS's direction. The project was called Project Soil. That was the first RPA program which L&T undertook. And since then, L&T has taken leaps and bounds this entire journey. I'm really happy about it. I still remember SNS in his interview said, Vimal, give me as many robots as possible. right? So one of my very early studies. In the blockchain part, now that has not been covered in great detail, so I'll talk about it. Effectively, think of a blockchain as a ledger, right? And there are a lot of companies which have started experimenting with blockchain as a technology. There are few interesting use cases available as well. I'll give you an example which is easy for you to connect, understand with, and I think L&T Valve specifically has a huge potential on blockchain. One example, and where in fact, one of my fellow partners was leading, was a wine making company. So if you look at wine, a lot of premium is paid to the source of the grapes, right? The blockchain essentially helps you understand the entire chain, right from saying where was this bottle packed all the way till the source, the agriculture, because the ledger keeps track of that entire data record. In the case of L&T valves and the valve manufacturing part, I mean, you're all very, very familiar with the inspection processes and the large sets of documentation required. There's an enormous opportunity to say, if this can be digitized, where we are not going to be carrying, files and files of paper, and we will have blockchain to capture the entire transaction trail, wherein a Saudi Aramco or any of your other clients or customers can actually, you have a very simple method by which they can have traceability of the casting and the actuators and any other component to be able to say, this is the way this entire valve has been built. It will eliminate probably 80% of the paper effort which you guys are undertaking. So similarly, other companies are also trying to use blockchain to put traceability to say, this is the way my casting was sourced. This is where my tires were sourced, and so on and so forth, depending on which sector or segment they operate in. Slightly long-winded answer, but I hope I was able to communicate the point.
Thank you, Vimal sir, for your take on blockchain, which is still a little vague topic for many of us. So I think we are on time to close the session. I'd like to thank all the panelists for taking their time and joining this session. Thank you, Subbu sir, for giving a finance perspective, Satish sir for giving a digitalization perspective, and Vimal for giving a business perspective. I think that helped us get a very overall holistic overview. And Subbu sir was from within Valves and Satish sir was in the larger L&T ecosystem, and Vimal sir gave an outsider's perspective. Overall, I think most of us got a very good idea. We could see that the strength of the participants was consistent till the end. So that means I think whatever you did had a lot of meaning and value to the participants. There are a lot more questions. I'll just collate them so that since we are running out of time and ask it offline. I think that's all from my side. And thank you, Samir, for the opportunity to organize this session. Sai, if you have any final closing words, you can just share them with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Satish sir, Vimal sir, and Subbu sir for giving your perspectives. I think for majority of the audience, now it has been clear the impact of digitalization, how it is going to impact in the future. So thanks a lot for all your perspectives, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity. It's likewise.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
everybody for joining as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
So we are logging off.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So